Are you searching for a deeper understanding of your faith?
Inspiring Philosophy is your go-to resource for exploring the rich tapestry of Christian thought.
From biblical archaeology to philosophy of mind, we dive into the topics that matter.
Our content bridges faith and understanding, offering insights into God's existence and the reliability of the New Testament.
Join a community where faith meets reason and discover the answers you've been seeking.
Inspiring Philosophy, where faith meets understanding.
Erase the name. Now every idol sounds the same. A generation on its knees, begging comfort, calling peace. Oh, this is the price of pride, dancing while the truth just dies. We fear the cross, embrace the chain. Our freedom's just another cage.
I love doing IPA streams because I just get to listen to that metalcore song for a little bit, even though I wrote it. I'm gonna just enjoy my music for a little bit. So, all right, guys, welcome to the first streaming we've done in a while here at Inspiring Philosophy Academy. Sorry that we haven't been doing too much here because, long story short, I've been working on building a bunch of courses. Ryan, you've been actually building a course as well for Model of God. We've been doing so much work. I'm super excited about what we're doing for the school community and everything here. And yeah, so we're going to be talking about miracles today. I'm going to show Ryan some miracles, hopefully stuff that you haven't seen before. We're going to just see how you respond, how you react. And I think this could be a really interesting thing to do because we were kind of talking about this, Ryan, but generally when it comes to miracles, in my experience, both when it comes to like professional philosophers and people on the internet, even Christians themselves, for some reason, right? You talk about miracles as evidence for Christianity, and they're kind of just like, well, okay, that's weird. We're not gonna talk about this because God interacting with the world, like that's too crazy. That's way out there, man.
Yeah.
What's your experience with all that?
I think that's right. Even when I look at some biblical scholarship, especially towards the end of the 20th century, there was a lot of it was like, well, this probably isn't really what happened because there's a miracle story here. And then some of the early science and religion dialogue that you see in the late 20th century, early 21st century, they were looking for anything they could to look at biblical cases of miracles and say, like, there's a purely naturalistic explanation for this. So, like, the parting of the Red Sea, I remember seeing this lecture from, I can't remember if this was a biologist or a physicist or something, but he's like, look, the wind can blow just right, and it can like move the sea away. And I'm like, yeah, there's stuff like the wind blowing, with the Red Sea, and then like also same thing with like some rocks in the desert. Like sometimes you hit them, like water comes out. So like just trying to come up with as many naturalistic explanations as possible because they were starting with this assumption that the universe has to be a closed system. It's impossible for it to be an open system, and then it's impossible for God to interact with it. And I'm like, what a weird assumption.
What's really interesting is the ancient Israelites, the ancient world in general, because nowadays a lot of people think in terms of the supernatural natural distinction, which I'm not sold on that distinction in the first place. But even putting that aside, the ancient audiences didn't really even have that in the first place. Like they actually were aware of like the natural law and the way things ought to like typically work when God is not intervening. And a lot of the times the best way to like describe on a pop level how they thought about the concept of miracles and God showing his power in the world was actually by God using natural forces to do things that normally would not occur. So even like that assumption of, well, what's the naturalistic explanation for this is totally congruent with the idea of the way that the ancients thought about this in the first place, i.e., if you strike a rock, maybe sometimes water just comes out. So it's like, well, okay, let's just say that God just pushes people in the particular direction where like that's the rock that is gonna that's where it's gonna happen. It's like that's still a show of power that God is interacting with people in the world. And anyway, I digress. You get the point that I'm trying to make.
Yeah.
So, all right, well, let's just kind of get into it. I'm gonna ask real quickly though, like, have you looked into miracle cases at all? What's your experience here?
I have not looked at a bunch of miracle cases in quite a while. There was this New Testament scholar at Asbury. I've just completely forgotten his name. Is this 2-volume?
Craig Keener.
Craig Keener, yes. He has a 2-volume series on John. And then I remember when he was working on his big book on miracles. And I remember like reading like some sections of that book, but I've not really looked into the cases much since then. So I'm assuming whatever you're going to show me is probably going to,
sweet.
I don't know. He's surprising.
So, yeah. This is for everybody that knows too, like some of these cases you've seen me talk about before. This is actually a huge slide deck that I'm building for the Inspiring Philosophy Academy like school community that you guys will have access to. But I hid a bunch of the slides just so that way we can just go through a few of them today. That's all. Okay, so the first question that I would just always want to talk about is just method. So I have a more in-depth methodological approach to this in my head that I just haven't on paper. You know how that goes, Ryan.
Yeah.
Um, but I think generally, like, this is a good list of criteria to talk about miracles in general. It's called the Lambertini criteria. So there's 7 of them, right? The diagnosis and the healing were both medically documented, right? That seems obvious that why that's a good thing, right? The illness was organic and not psychosomatic. So basically, is it? Here's a good way of putting it. Is it you're thinking about your tummy hurts, or you're thinking your back hurts, and then all of a sudden your mind does that thing where all of a sudden your tummy hurts, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So organic means there's actually some sort of mechanical or functional problem with the body. If the illness was progressive and showed no improvement prior to healing, that's another big marker. So at the time of the healing, are things continually getting worse previous to that point? If the healing is permanent and not temporary, i.e., my arm gets chopped off and then all of a sudden it regrows, but then for some reason God made a mistake with the stitching or something and it falls back off.
It just falls off again. Yeah. Okay.
Nobody chopped it off a second time. Or for instance, like I go blind and then I get healed, but then the blindness comes back. What's the explanation there?
Right.
That doesn't mean necessarily that, like, okay, there are caveats there, obviously. So it's like, suppose I go blind from macular degeneration and somebody throws acid in my face after I'm healed. It's like, well, okay, that that's okay. It's not going to actually discount the miracle. You get the point. The healing is instantaneous and not gradual. So if you get prayed for and then 2 years later you're better, well, that's going to lower the probability that this is like a God thing, because things can gradually get better over time.
Yeah.
Healing is complete and not merely partial. So again, imagine arms chopped off. We don't want, if God only heals it up to here, we're going to be like, okay, well, why is that happening? And spontaneous and not attributable to treatment. So there's a distinction between it, spontaneous and instantaneous. Instantaneous means like right now. Spontaneous is like more of like there's no natural precedent to it, or there's no prior or previous conditions that would make it likely, like the remission or healing happen, if that makes sense.
Okay. Yeah.
Questions on that?
I guess I'm curious about some other criteria you might want to throw in there. Like there needs to be some kind of religious context in my opinion.
Yeah. So that's some of the stuff that's in my head that I don't have on paper. So religious context is definitely one of them. This is where these discussions get really hard, because for instance, how do you control for the variable that other people might be praying for you?
Right.
How do you control for the variable that, for instance, there's a possibility out there somebody's praying you don't get healed? Right. There's tons of weird things that are happening out there. So religious context is one of them. This is one of the reasons why I try to focus a lot on something called proximal intercessory prayer.
Okay.
So basically it's like in-person prayer where there's hands-on prayer happening. And I'd rather have a methodology that has a bunch of false negatives on it than a bunch of false positives, if that makes sense. Just because there's so much stuff you can't control for. Yeah. There's other things to control for as well. And this is even just outside of the bounds of like establishing which particular instances are more probable than not. For instance, like another variable to think about is how many people are out there that have been healed in the context of prayer and then never reported it. Right. I can tell you firsthand, I've interviewed and talked to and seen the medical records of people who got healed. And then I asked them, like, why didn't you go to the doctor and, get checked and get all this evidence? And for them, they're just like, well, I don't want to go to the doctor and be like, I got prayed for, and then have him make fun of me. Like,
yeah, there's a lot of reasons why you just be like, I don't want to do that. Or I don't want to pay the copay again to have like the doctor do all these tests and stuff. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of reasons why you would just be like, yeah, they're going to think I'm crazy. I don't want to waste money. Yeah, but the religious context thing I think is important because like historically, when a lot of Christian philosophers have looked at like different kind of cases and try to say like which one's a miracle, which one's not. So Swinburne has this really funny example. So Richard Swinburne says, imagine there's like a child, like has a bunch of toys in his room. There's like a feather laying on the ground, and the child leaves the room. So no one's in the room to watch this, and then God makes the feather just kind of levitate off the ground.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a miracle? And you're like, well, it's some kind of special divine act. And Swinburne's like, no, it's not a miracle, because miracles are supposed to be some sort of sign and wonder from God to a particular like individual or group of people to try to tell them something. And so if no one's around to watch this feather kind of float, then it's like, well, since Swinburne's like, well, then it's not religiously significant. There's no context here. It's not a miracle. It is certainly some weird kind of divine act, but it doesn't fall into this category of miracle.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I, in my debate with Dillahunty a few years back, in my book, I outline this too. So I define a miracle very specifically. I just basically say like an act of God on the created world, such that constitutes an event that what happens would not have happened if the created world was left to itself, for the purposes of conveying a message or vindicating a religious message.
Yes, that sounds right to me. So yeah, you'll see Aquinas. He has like a similar kind of definition as well. And what's funny too is when you're looking at people like Aquinas and some others, T.J. Mawson does this too. These different categories. So there's like, I can't remember how the categories go, but there's like, it's like one category is no human person could have pulled this off. Maybe like an angel, maybe a demon. Aquinas is like, I don't know, maybe one of those two like could have done it. And then there's some others that are like this like really like super miracle kind of category where only God could pull this off.
Mm-hmm.
What I find interesting about that one is I'm like, I've not had any interaction with angels or demons, so I don't really know what the powers of angels and demons are, if there are such things. So I don't know how you judge that one. But there's there's these different kind of categories though.
It's really funny that you bring that up, because in my theodicy book, I actually have a section where I talk about the powers and capacities and capabilities of angels and demons. And I kind of outline like a possibility space of what they could be like. And for the most part, I argue that they have, like, if you had a sliding scale of godlike capacities versus human-like capacities, they're actually closer to the human-like. It's just that they're what I would call like transmaterial. But we can put that to the side for now. Otherwise, it's the old can of worms. Yeah. Okay. So here's just some case studies. First case study. Have you ever heard of Marilyn Ford?
No.
Okay. So I'll try to breeze through some of this. These first two I'm going to show you are actually peer reviewed. And they're in a journal. I forget the journal off the top of my head. Now, a lot of people are going to actually get really antsy about this, especially like really hardcore skeptics, because the journals are not like medical journals. It's a case study. And we can talk about some of the sociological reasons and all that stuff if you want to at some point in the stream. But I'm just kind of putting that out there right away. But for this one, at least, here's the case report. It says, case report of instantaneous resolution of juvenile macular degeneration, blindness after proximal intercessory prayer. So the basic highlights is that Marilyn Ford was presented with sudden bilateral vision loss and atrophy in each fovea. She was diagnosed with juvenile macular degeneration, was blind for 12 years. She had, I'm going to just call it PIP or PIP from henceforth, where she actually experienced and regained her eyesight. And her eyesight has remained 20/40 or better for over 40 years since the PIP event. So in the 1960, the VA records legal blindness. She has a dense yellowish white foveal atrophy in both eyes, and she's diagnosed with JMD. In 1971, finger counting vision in the right eye. So if you have questions too on any of the medical mumbo and jumbo, I can expand. In the right eye and in the left eye, those go get tested, and I'll show you that stuff. And she's declared legally blind. In 1972, she's healed. In 1974 onward, we have documented improvement with later corrected 2030 over 2040 eyesight intact for 47 years. There is going to be an interesting little side note that we're going to get into here because it's not 2020, right? That's an objection somebody's going to ask, and I'll get into that when we get there.
I was curious about that. Yeah.
I'll take care of that when we get to that point. Is that fair?
Yeah, that sounds a good idea. Yeah.
Okay. So for anybody that doesn't know, JMD is an inherited central vision loss from the deterioration of the macula in the eye. And there's no precedent in the literature, as far as I can tell, and I've scanned everywhere I can, that I can think of. There's just no precedent. There's no parallel to a case like this. This is one of a kind. She has, like I said, sudden vision loss in 1959. Her right eye vision loss came 2 months later, and a loss occurred over 2 to 3 day periods. There's no trauma, no infection or exposure. And the initial visual acuity she has is 7 over 200 in both eyes. So like really, really bad.
Yeah.
Here's the timeline, if just to kind of help you kind of see it and visualize it a little bit better. So in August 1972, her husband prays for her restoration of sight, and she opens her eyes and sees clearly. Her visual acuity gets documented in 1974, 20 over 100 without correction. 2001 to 2017, then she has corrected visual acuity, repeatedly documented around 2030 to 2040. And the long-term outcome is that her sight remained intact for 47 years. She is one of those old people that have better vision at this point, by the way, 47 years later than most people do when they're young, which is really crazy. And I have the medical documentation later on too, so you can look at that too. So in terms of competing hypotheses, there's spontaneous remission, but that's less probable because, as the author stated in the paper too, GMD typically stabilizes after the decline and then remains at that level. There's no known spontaneous recovery cases or models or anything. For conversion disorder or psychosomatic blindness, it's less probable because we actually have an objective organic pathology. We can actually see the fovea, we can see the scotoma. A conversion disorder or anything like this can't actually explain the actual physical organic presentation that we have, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Placebo effect, again, less probable because visual acuity improvement is not under direct voluntary control, right? There's nothing in the mind that somehow just, if our mind was that powerful, you get the point.
Yeah, I'd be pretty impressed if I could just kind of think really hard about improving my eyesight.
Really just believe my arm's growing back. People might say there's medical treatment, maybe that worked. Again, less probable because later treatments like gene therapy and stem cell work that we even have now, they're not available at this point in time. And even modern medicine that we do, even modern treatment that we have is limited compared to this case, like the outcomes are. And then obviously there's where they lied. And then you're going to have to basically just be like, okay, well, that means that all the separate doctors that were involved, all the other people that are testifying to this and living life for so long, right? You already know it's very difficult to have a elaborate scheme set up like this with that medical documentation.
Yeah.
And so here are some of the actual medical records. It's really hard to read doctor handwriting.
Oh gosh, yeah, notoriously, yeah.
So I actually have the translations here as well. We can stop and look at them if you want to, but I'm just going to scan through here. So this is June 10th, 1960. This is her diagnosis and the visual acuity. This is 1960. This is the description of the yellow atrophy in the macular retina of each eye. Unable to offer treatments. This one was really fun to translate. It's an examination in 1971 that confirms legal blindness. And you can see the extropia here. There's degeneration and scarring of the macula in both eyes. Again, the visual acuity scores, all that stuff. 1971 through 1974. This is just again showing finger count, hand motion, left eye, hand motion, right eye, left eye, all without glasses, the acuity scores. And then this is the complete eye examination after she got healed. Visual acuity 20/40, corrected over under. So this is this normal eye exam, except for evidence of dry eye and early cataract changes. The optic nerves and macula are recorded as normal. So here's her stuff for cataract surgery that she gets. Then she gets another eye examination in 2013.
So she gets cataract surgery when she's how old at this point? Because like, so it's
hard to remember off the top of my head.
Yeah, because she was like how old? Because how old was she when all this happened in the 70s? She was I think because I think you said like the loss was like at age 17 or something.
Yeah, I think.
And then it's a few years after that.
Cataract surgery. So she got healed. Oops. So 1971, 1974. So this is
and then the cataract surgery in 2012, I think.
12. Yeah, so it's almost 40
that's a
years
long
later.
time. Yeah, so she's got pretty good eyesight for a very long time. And then when she's just
getting
an old
older
woman at this point, you know. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So
yeah, fair enough.
Christian story, right?
Mm-hmm.
Even if you get healed, that's not your resurrected body.
Right.
You're still gonna die. Aging is gonna happen. All that stuff. And then just more stuff here. So in 2017, she has fundus photos taken of both eyes. Just more fun stuff to look at the end of the day here. Okay, so let's actually talk about the whole 20/40/20 /20/30 thing instead of 20/20. What if I just told you her eyesight prior to getting diagnosed with JMD was in that range?
Okay, so so it's just a reversal of the loss of sight. It's like
exactly.
Here's what you had. I'm putting you back. I'm just resetting it here for you.
Right, exactly. So that's typically the objection that'll come. And even so, let's just like operate on the condition that maybe she had 20/20 vision or something like that. It's still it would still be a 400% increase in visual acuity that we just have no precedent for and no parallel to.
Right.
So with the 7 criteria, case 1, it's medically documented, it's progressive, it's organic, it's instantaneous, it's complete, spontaneous, and permanent, I would argue. What are the vibes here for the first case?
I mean, this sounds right to me. It seems like it's ticking all the boxes, and then also you have a religious context. You've got some explicit prayer from the husband. Was that right?
Yeah. So the more intimate details there that I left out for the slides is, she was just like really sad one night, and basically the husband goes up to her and says, "Lord, please restore her sight. I know you can." And then out of nowhere, she like looks at him and starts weeping and crying because she's like looking at her husband for the first time in such a long time.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So
it's very dramatic.
It was a very dramatic one. Yeah. So I'm trying to keep the drama out of some of the slides.
Yeah.
Because people already kind of about it.
Yeah, because they're exactly. Yeah. Because we already know we're going to get made fun of in the comments for this one.
Yeah.
So
do you have any thoughts, comments?
No, I find it interesting, especially like the kind of like the resetting back to like, here's the eyesight you had before. I find that fascinating. Because I guess when I'm looking at some of the biblical, like the New Testament accounts, it's not like when Jesus is going around healing people, all of a sudden they're like basketball players or something.
Right. I was just gonna say, pick up your mat and walk. It's not like the guy all of a sudden was able to squat like 500 pounds. Like,
yeah. It doesn't say anything about him going for do a triathlon afterwards or whatnot.
Exactly.
So yeah, I guess that kind of makes sense. It's just like, this is my way of life, and I would like to have it back. And God's like, yeah, okay, here you go. Here's it back.
Yep. All right, let's do some super chats really quickly because they're piling. Randy Bills, 5 memberships, thank you, and another membership. That's 6. Jason became a YouTube member, thank you. Any thoughts on Eucharistic miracles and what they might not prove? I don't know if you've ever looked into them,
I
Ryan.
need an example to think about. I'm not
I can send you some stuff if you want to look at them.
sure. Yeah.
So there are. I'm trying to find a way to say this without giving away my denomination.
Sure, but is it the idea like someone takes communion and then they have like an
No,
answer to their prayer or something afterwards, or what's going on here?
Eucharistic miracle, meaning there is a Eucharist that is set up properly in a Catholic, typically, setting.
Okay.
And what ends up happening in some of these cases is they actually find flesh in there after they
Oh.
do what they need to do. And there are two cases that are very interesting to me, that I actually think are very, very, I'm going to say probable. I'm going to say that they're really good candidates for being
Okay.
authentic miracles. As for what they might or might not prove, it's really difficult, because if I'm looking at both sides of like the Catholic debate and Protestants and the EOs, and I'm like putting myself in this headspace of like, how would I respond if I'm this, if I'm this, if I'm this, I have a really hard time knowing whether or not you can actually index any sort of miracles to any particular denomination. So that's a whole separate methodological discussion.
Yeah.
But like, it's difficult. It's difficult. Like, for instance, there's Marian apparitions. And the thing is, like, some people might think that's like going to be a very strong piece of evidence for some sort of Marian dogma or a particular denomination. And if you look at that, though, for instance, like in some of these settings, there's the church that is predominantly there in a particular setting, for instance, might be a Catholic church, but then the rest of the community there might be Muslim or might be something like secularist or something like that. And so like the only hope for unity is like this particular church, because there's nobody else around.
Right.
At that point, you might think God's going to perform some sort of a miracle like that to vindicate going to the church in some way, shape, or form. Again, tons of things that you can say there, but I'll stop yapping there for now.
No, I think that's right, because when I'm looking at miracle cases, at least like the ones you see in the Bible, there's a very specific message attached to a lot of them. It's not usually like some insanely detailed dogma attached to it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then of course, the Eucharistic case though, if I found like flesh and like floating around in my wine after I sipped it, I think I know what my original reaction would probably be to throw up, and then from there maybe I have a moment of reflection and go, okay, what's happening here? But yeah, that one would kind of gross me out, I think.
Yeah, well, to be clear, nobody took the Eucharist when it was like that. Typically, what happens is if the priest thinks that something is happening, then they put it away into a lockbox and everything to keep it safe, so nobody can get into it or tamper with it, and an investigation starts.
Okay, so they got a protocol for this.
Yeah,
that's good.
There's a protocol.
Because when I went to this church of was it Church of Scotland? No, it was Church of England, but it was in Scotland, so it's got a slightly different name. And the protocol there is whatever is left over after you give out like the communion to everyone, the priest has to finish before they start preaching. And I remember one of my professors, like he just like looks over at the organ and like kind of like waves his hand like really frantically, and the organ player starts going again, and the guy's just like knocking back like glass after glass, and his face is just like stuffed with all these wafers, because there was they planned for too many people and there weren't that many people that day. So,
oh man, so it's just getting a buzz.
Oh yeah, just like dude, like two full glasses of wine, and then like no,
poor guy. Hi Than, watching live with Ryan is a treat. Yeah. Ooh. we're probably gonna do a lot more of these, man, especially with as IPA keeps growing and more of my attention gets diverted here. We're gonna do a lot more of these fun streams where it's not a WWE match all the time. Be the Iron says Ryan, thanks for convincing me of a more social Trinitarian model and away from the processional views. Now I can't be Eastern Orthodox. Is there a context here?
I mean, just a lot of the work I've done on the processions, just arguing that like it entails any number of heresies. But I do personally know like some Eastern Orthodox who think I'm probably right on my arguments for processions. So yeah, and in Eastern Orthodox too, like they're like, we disagree on all sorts of dogma. That's why you could become Eastern Orthodox. And I'm like, is that the only reason? Like, I don't know. I can never figure out like all the reasons why I should supposedly become Eastern Orthodox.
Fair enough. All right, let's get back to it. Here's case number 2. This guy, Chris Gunderson, I actually talked to a few times. We interviewed him on this channel a few years back, actually. And I've talked to him like over the phone and stuff like that, and gotten to see some really cool stuff. One of the things that sucks, by the way, Ryan, about a lot of these cases is I just because I've been granted legal rights to see some of the medical documentation does not mean that I have the legal rights to push it out there for everybody to see.
Yeah.
It's one of the frustrating things. You have to jump through so many legal hoops. And you also really want to be respectful to the people. So with this one, I have medical documentation, but we don't have like images or MRIs or none of that stuff. So here's case number 2, Chris Gunderson, gastroparesis. Again, another paper, same journal. So here are the highlights. This is a severe disease that begins in infancy. He has projectile vomiting within the first few weeks of his life. He was diagnosed with gastroparesis. And this is a condition that's severe enough to require a gastronomy tube and a jejunostomy tube, which I'll show you a figure of what that looks like. And for about 16 years of his life, he was completely dependent on the tube feedings. There was also refractory treatment, so he underwent multiple surgical procedures. Physicians tried numerous medications and nutritional interventions for him, and he was unable to eat or tolerate normal food or oral feeding despite years of treatment. So they tried tons of stuff. He could only really have a formula through the tubes. In November 6, 2011, at the age of 16, he received PIP. And during the prayer, he reported an unusual electrical pulsating sensation traveling from his shoulder across his abdomen. And that same night, he had a meal without any complications. Insider knowledge, the meal that he ate was Chinese food. Like, yeah, I haven't been able to eat like anything without throwing up and projectile vomiting all my life, but maybe I feel like I can now. Let's go eat some Chinese food.
Like a little bit of sweet and sour chicken over here,
Oh, man, dude, like here I'm sitting here thinking like when I was a firefighter, there was a Chinese restaurant called Chen's, and we made sure to go there when we know our shift is like about to end, or if we think it's going to be a slower like night, because we were scared of getting something called Chen's revenge.
Yeah, right.
So this was a durable recovery when he was healed. Within 1 month, he was actually completely off the J-tube feeding. After 3 months of successful oral feedings, they actually removed the feeding tubes. And 4 months after the prayer, the J and G tubes were surgically removed. And then follow-up found no further gastroparesis treatment needed. Now, if you're wondering, okay, what's up with these months between getting healed and all this stuff? It'll make sense in a bit.
Okay.
So gastroparesis, if you don't know, it's a chronic syndrome involving objectively delayed gastric emptying in the absence of mechanical obstruction, meaning your stomach takes in the food and it empties it, right? Your stomach does not do that. It's basically paralyzed. It doesn't do the things it's supposed to do. So you can't even absorb the nutrients. Everything's just going to come right back up. So the symptoms include nausea, vomiting, early satiety, abdominal fullness, bloating, pain, inability to tolerate normal food intake. So like, this is not a tummy ache. This is like, you literally just cannot survive because you're not getting any nutrients, nothing. They had to bypass his stomach through a surgically placed feeding tube, like I said. And this is a chronic condition in which like therapy manages the symptoms and nutrition rather than actually changing the way that your stomach actually performs. There's no complete resolution for this. This starts at around 1 week old. At 2 weeks old, he's diagnosed with pyloric stenosis and underwent a pyloromytom, that word, which I have a diagram for you. Just know what that means, what that looks
Okay,
like.
because I don't know what that is.
Yeah. The subsequent testing revealed severe reflux and hypomental stomach, again, meaning it's not working right. And then the gastric emptying testing established the gastroparesis. So this is what the pyroplodotomy thing is, which if you look at the screen, this is just how they put in the J and G tube here. So the food comes in, you can't see my mouse, but the food comes in from the top, goes in, then they basically close off the entrance to the large intestine from there. And then the food goes through the J and G tube. It bypasses that tubing and then goes back into the small intestine. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So this is 16 years. He's completely dependent on the tube feeding. He lived a relatively quote unquote normal life, but it's not because his stomach was working properly. This was in spite of that. And it's because of the tube feedings and the formula feedings that he's getting. Again, timeline. So 1995, he's born. And up to 2011, he has 16 years of dependence on tube feeding. This is his whole life. In November 6, 2011, the family is actually, fun context, they were cessationists. They thought miracles weren't happening anymore. And they just kind of, out of a somewhat desperate attempt, as they've said it to me, they went to a Pentecostal healing service where an evangelist was speaking. And at the service, he prays over Chris and asks Jesus to heal his stomach under the authority of Jesus. And these are things that are like very important religious context wise, but also like these are literally what's reported.
Mm-hmm.
And then during that prayer, Chris reports that there was like an electrical shock going from his shoulder down through his abdomen. And that night, he ate Chinese food without any complications. So that's kind of like how the timeline works out. So 1 month later, he was completely removed from the J-tube feeding. After that, his pediatric gastroenterologist had treated him for 16 years, verifies that his symptoms have resolved, and the physician basically just recommends still waiting 3 months before removing the tubes to demonstrate sustained oral tolerance. So the first month is basically, hey, we don't know what the heck is happening. Do what you want to do, but still do your oral feedings, the tube feedings, just in case, so you can make sure you're getting your nutrition. A few months later, the pediatrician says, okay, well, it looks like your symptoms are gone. Let's keep the tubes in just in case, because I've never seen this crap before, right? And then 4 months later, he's confident enough that this is going to stick, that they actually remove the tubes. And then to this day, Chris has no symptoms. So the explanandum here, right? And I'm kind of framing it this way too, because a lot of people might think a condensed narrative, but there's like actually really important data to think about here, right? We have an objectively diagnosed severe gastroparesis that began in infancy, persisted for 16 years, was refractory to medical and surgical management, and required complete jejunal nutritional dependence. Somebody like that experienced an abrupt restoration of oral feeding, which was temporally associated with explicitly Christian healing prayer under the authority of Jesus, beginning in the same evening, followed by complete discontinuation of the tube feeding, surgical tube was removed, and durable long-term remission. We can go over, there's a lot of alternative explanations for these, but spontaneous remission, it's not found in the literature, basically, for this kind of gastroparesis. Post-viral gastroparesis is the most interesting one, in my opinion, because there is something called post-viral gastroparesis, and that can resolve spontaneously. But the problem is that the typical course of how this works out is actually working against this case. Post-viral cases generally resolve progressively within 2 years. And it comes after you get a virus of some sort, right? This is somebody was born with it. And so Chris's severe symptoms persisted for about 16 years. So if you have this hypothesis of the post-viral thing, that predicts that there would be a viral onset and gradual recovery over a few years. But the observed evidence we have is infancy, 16 years, and a sudden recovery. So that temporal profile doesn't match the post-viral hypothesis. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Somebody might say the treatment finally worked, but that's just going to be like not understanding the mechanics here, which we can dig into if you want. But again, the basic idea is like, okay, if you want, this is what you want to say. What you're really saying is there's a bunch of surgeries that happened when he was young, and it took, for some reason, 10 years, 5 years for them to finally work. That's possible. But now you have to somehow explain this temporal coincidence between the prayer and him eating that same night and it taking so long. And you would have to also have a model to explain why the surgeries took that long to work. All of this, right?
Yeah.
That's going to get incredibly ad hoc really fast.
It might get ad hoc really fast, but I think at the very least in this case, there is a burden here to say, okay, I want to give an alternative explanation. Here's the things I need to explain. You've at least got that all laid out on the table quite clearly. What needs to be explained.
Yeah. Placebo effect. We already covered it kind of in the last case. Why that's not going to work. Psychogenic disease is another one. So basically, the basic idea is like, is there a functional pathology that could be happening here? And if that's the case, basically, the disorder wouldn't work because this was actually tested through nuclear gastric emptying studies. There are intestinal manometry and documented hypomotility. So basically, all you need to know here is if it was psychogenic, the things that you were seeing with the actual studies and the tests that they did, you wouldn't see those. So that disconfirms that hypothesis. Misdiagnosis is another one. So basically, could there be a congenital issue, a vagal nerve something? But now this conflates something, which is there's a question of why did he have gastroparesis? And there's the question of whether or not there was gastric dysfunction happening in the first place. So regardless of the etiology, which is the origin of the pathology, you still have this, regardless of the origin. And so
you still have the case of like, I'm just throwing up all the time. So I mean, it would suck to have the wrong diagnosis, obviously, but yeah, the phenomena is still the same. And then the phenomena went away.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the evidential force here is really crazy, again, because you have a severe objective disease, 16 years, failure of extensive treatment, complete tube dependence, specific prayer for healing, abrupt restoration, physician confirmed the sustained recovery, the tube removal, and long-term remission. And this is where like a lot of the skeptical replies here are going to be like, okay, well, can we imagine some sort of natural explanation? And that's like a bad question, in my opinion, or it's not the bad question. It's a question to ask, but it's not the only question to ask, because the more important question to ask is how probable is that natural explanation, given the particular pattern of evidence that we have.
Yes.
And that's the important thing.
Yeah. So I guess I have two thoughts on this. One, first, so I looked up to find where this is. So this is the Journal of Complementary Therapies in Medicine.
Yes.
Yeah, which is a journal. The current editor is a health science specialist in the UK. They have an impact factor of 4, which is pretty decent. It's not like the best in the world, but like it's pretty good. Most philosophy journals don't get that much of an impact factor. So, whatever, take that for what it's worth. The second thought is, so TJ Mawson has this category of miracles he calls miracles of timing. So it's something that could like naturally happen, but it's just the timing, the way it coincides with like some sort of religious context is just so remarkable. You're like, okay, it could have a purely naturalistic explanation, but like, come on, the timing here is just really kind of ridiculous. So that feels like this would, if this is all legit, that would be in the category of like a miracle of timing.
Yeah, I'm actually pulling something up too, because you looked up the
the journal.
Yeah. 1 second. I have some notes on
It's
this.
open access too, so for anybody watching who's just like seething in the comment section, like they can go read the full journal article without having to go through a paywall.
What the heck is happening here? Yeah, because there's a bunch of like sociological stuff to kind of keep in mind, and also just other fun stuff that's really annoying to talk about, because a lot of people will be like, you're right, people do seethe when they see that it's like a alternative medicine journal or anything like that, right? If this will work, my goodness, what is happening here? Well, wait, let's try this instead. My silly, here we go. Is it this? No, it's not. I'll find it eventually. Yeah, there's a bunch of sociological things that are going on here. Like, here's one thing to consider. Imagine you're a medical professional and you really care about your authority in your name, and there's this preconceived bias in the medical literature about miracles, right? Are you going to be able to publish in there or not? No, you're not going to be able to. The other thing to consider too is that a lot of these medical journals, what they're interested in is actual organic mechanisms of healing. So actual like chemistry, biology, stuff like that you can actually, as a human, produce healing for. So it'd be actually counter to the journal's own methods and goals to just include something like this. This would be like asking a philosophical journal to publish a paper that a historian wrote about some sort of model of the Gospels, and the philosophical journal would be like, why are you giving this to us? Like, this is what we do. So these are just some of the medical journals that I records from his case too that I was able to put up. A lot of these are just like pediatric and gastroenterologist clinic notes. Just kind of pointing out everything I'm saying. We can pause on any of them if you want to. But yeah, so there's a bunch of these. You can actually get this too now, I think, in the journal article. They have a supplementary material guide here. So yeah, again, it's medically documented, it's progressive, it's organic, it's instantaneous, complete, spontaneous, and permanent. So what are your thoughts there, Ryan?
I mean, it sounds legit. I mean, like with the previous one, I'd want to look at the case more closely myself before I draw a conclusion. But yeah, it looks like it's ticking all the boxes, and I think it would be difficult to figure out what exactly a naturalistic explanation would look like in both of these cases. So with this one here, I mean, it could be like finally all these different surgeries and finally all these different treatments, they all finally kick in. It's just the timing is really interesting because the timing coincides exactly with like this encounter at the Pentecostal church. And so you're like, okay.
Yeah, I mean, I actually just don't something I just don't actually think I can wrap my head around is why people think the timing, because a lot of people just at the end of the day sometimes push back and go, well, what's with the time? Like, who cares about the timing? Miracles just don't happen. Like, that's typically the response when it comes to that. Do you have any thoughts on?
Yeah, I mean, I guess because evidence is always, so there's objective evidence, but the cogency of any sort of evidence is always going to be person dependent, because what I can actually assess in different contexts is limited. So for example, my wife, when she was still working in the lab, she took me to do, it's this test you do on RNA called a Western. and I have no idea what I was doing to these cells, to these proteins. But I'm looking at these gels and looking at the proteins go through the gels. I don't know what I'm looking at. I have no clue what I'm looking at. But she's like, oh, right, okay, well, this is not very significant. Over here, this is significant. I'm like, okay. The evidence there in this case required like some pretty high level training in order to see what really counts as evidence in this case. Whereas I just lacked that, so I couldn't see it. And I think when we're looking at where you look at miracle cases, you've got different kinds of things at play here that are going to factor into whether or not this is going to be evidence for you. Do you have the skill involved? Do you have the open-mindedness? Do you have a healthy sort of skepticism, or is it just an irrational, like overly unnecessary level of skepticism? So it's difficult for me to really say, like, everyone watching, you should like start believing right now, because I don't know other things going on in your life and your educational background or anything like that to really help you navigate if I could push this should count as evidence for you or not.
Yeah. Let's do some super chats, because somebody actually even sent in a super chat asking about the journal, and I finally was able to pull up my stuff here on this. Oops, wait, start here. There's a guy turning regional EPS presentation to faith and philosophy article using signaling pragmatics from game theory to show that the agent of Jesus' resurrection is not contrastively underdetermined. No Swinburne priors needed. Send me anything you got on that, Apollos. I'd like to see that.
Yeah.
And I can send it to you too, Ryan, if you want. TLDR, aliens and demons didn't resurrect Jesus. It's funny. It's funny, Ryan, because people will actually say it's a simpler hypothesis to say that aliens brought him back.
I mean,
in my head,
sure.
I'm like, not really, because you're going to have to posit a bunch of intentions and powers and capacities and all this other stuff that, like, the base hypothesis of alien doesn't actually entail or make more probable. Whereas, like, for theism, you have one simple hypothesis that actually, like, all of these things can flow from a lot easier.
Yeah, because the religious context here is like, I've got someone claiming the God of Israel is interested in X, Y, and Z, and then there's a prediction that there's going to be a resurrection, and then it happens. If I want to posit aliens, okay, cool. What are the intentions of these aliens? Like, I don't have any.
And why are those the intentions?
Right. So I've got no context here to try to figure out what exactly these aliens are up to or interested in. Whereas the preachings of Jesus in that religious context, they give me a very interesting story where I can start making some kind of hypothesis. So the aliens one, demons. I don't know. I don't know anything about the intentions of demons. So I don't know. I just don't know what to say what they're up to.
But atheism easily explains all of these miracles with just axiarchism, and axiarchism being true is totally not evidence for theism. I love this. If you know, you know. So I was looking into the absolute worst mission self-sabotage in history that happened in Japan. Then I learned about how ancient Shinto has a deity that is incredibly similar to Yahweh, possible proto-Trinitarian aspects, named Ame no Minakonoshi, but they mostly ignored him because they, thought he was seen as too distant. China also has an ancient religion called Shangdi with a Yahweh-type deity, might be monistic too, and had similar animal sacrifice practices as ancient Judaism. Missionaries to both argued this was actually a limited revelation of Yahweh. Any thoughts?
There are a bunch of cases where, when you're looking at Eastern religions, things that look kind of Christian pop up, or at least definitely a lot of monotheism pops up more than you'd expect. And I want to attribute this to that monotheism is really plausible, and that it is incredibly natural for human persons to develop beliefs about God and other supernatural entities at really early ages. So something really plausible about theism and something plausible about something in the neighborhood of Christianity just strikes humans as reasonable to affirm. So there's are you familiar with like this thing called Pure Land Buddhism? It's
yes, but like I wouldn't be able to tell you anything off the top of my head about it.
So there's this So there's this problem within Buddhism where if you get reincarnated, you keep getting reincarnated over and over again, you might get so much bad karma that you're just completely screwed. Like there's just nothing you could do to get rid of it. And so one of these bodhisattvas, one of these people that supposedly reached enlightenment, this is the way the story goes, is created this land called the Pure Lands, which is like the last stop before nirvana. So it's this kind of heavenly sort of place. And it's a place where you can be like, just kind of chill and really like focus just on achieving enlightenment. But one of the bodhisattvas was like, how do I get more people up here? What if I give them grace? So it's not like anything they can actually do to like get rid of all this negative karma. But if they just do a simple prayer and ask for forgiveness, I could just give them grace and then they can come to the Pure Lands. And so it's a very similar kind of account of grace that you see within Christianity, where it's like, look, yeah, like you suck. There's nothing really you could do, but if you ask for forgiveness, I'll give it to you. So what this says to me is there's something really plausible within human thought when you're trying to think through the bigger story of the world. Some of these different kind of themes you see in Christianity, there's something reasonable about them that you see pop up elsewhere in other religions, as they're also humans trying to figure out the way the world is and how it works.
Yeah. One of the things that I'm actually, I'll let people know what I'm working on here. It's going to be a little social media series that I'm going to be doing too. They'll all be like little standalone videos, but also I think Christianity speaks to like an existential truth everybody actually feels. They might not like rationally, explicitly affirm it, but like if somebody were to like come up to you and be like, hey, I know deep down you have this fear of nobody actually like choosing you and loving you rather than just like what you're useful for, right? Then all of a sudden they're like, yeah, I do feel like that, right? Assuming they'll choose to be vulnerable.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And it's like everybody kind of has this existential thing that they're searching for, and it's like Christianity speaks to that. Well, so what are the odds that like this is how we're wired, and Christianity happens to answer those questions? There is a way that actually can be evidence, I think, as well. So all right, this is the super chat I was hoping to get to. Just to play devil's advocate, are there potential credibility issues with alternative medicine journals? Okay, I'm not going to go over everything I say here, but I'll just rattle off a few different bullet points. So one, I'll say this. In terms of credibility, in terms of like what I mean by this is authority, because let's use credibility and authority not interchangeably. There's credibility and there's authority. So can a alternative medicine journal be less trustworthy in terms of its authority to actually put out papers that properly diagnose things or something like that? Sure. However, that's a question of authority, not the actual evidence in question. That's like going to be the first thing I'm going to say. Like at the end of the day, you would have to say at the end of the day, the data is still the data, and you still have to reason about the data regardless of who it's coming from. So even if we kind of grant that alternative medicine journals are not as trustworthy as other medical journals, you still have this problem where you're still going to have to talk about the data. Just kind of going, well, it's not peer reviewed in this journal that I like. It's not going to put the problem away. The other thing is that a lot of these things are in terms of experimental studies, and they're not pointed at medical procedures or anything like that. So you have to, there's a give and take when it comes to medical journals. I kind of alluded to this earlier. There's also that this kind of goes with everything else I said previously. The journal itself is not the evidence,
right?
Like we people need to stop pretending like a journal and a peer-reviewed article is evidence. It's somebody talking about the evidence, and then you can poison the well all you want. You can do all these things, but at the end of the day, the data is still the data. Somebody might say something like, well, why isn't the case published somewhere better? I said this earlier, mainstream journals are just not going to be archives for different miracle cases, right? They're going to want to do novel medical like interventions. They're going to talk about unexpected presentations, diagnostic traps, pathologies, new mechanisms, stuff like that. The other thing to consider is that sometimes these mainstream journals actually might publish medical events without talking about the miracle claims in them, which has happened before. I have cases
Oh yeah, it wouldn't
in
surprise me.
medical. I have cases that I can show you too, Ryan, by the way, where there's they'll say spontaneous regression in X disease, and when you actually go into the case, and there's papers and there's journal entries where I've actually looked at these, and I talked to people, I looked at the data. The journal entry leaves out the fact that somebody was prayed for when they're trying to talk about unexplained remissions and spontaneous remissions and stuff like that. They'll posit some sort of mechanism. So a lot of these times there might be actual miracle reports that have happened in these medical journals, but the purpose of the medical entry of the journal entry is not to talk about the miracle.
Right.
So that's another thing to keep in mind. There's also the fact that, and this isn't like a don't trust big pharma thing I'm about to say, right? But also these journal entries are largely going to be these journals are going to be largely interested in the profit of the pharmaceutical industry, right? And so talking about a miracle case is both going to be against what they're trying to accomplish in terms of just the actual goal, and they can't make money off of miracles. There's so much more I can say. I'm going to stop yapping there, but let me know. It sounds like you want to say something there too, Ryan.
Yeah, because like, okay, the peer review process is a nightmare, and there's a lot of politics at play. Yes. There are certain journals that I just cannot get published in just because some of the people on the editorial board do not like the positions I affirm. So there's one journal that I've never been able to get published in, but every paper that's been rejected from there has found a home somewhere else and has been cited in a Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy entry. So it was good quality paper. I've been cited in, I think, like 11 different articles in the Stanford Encyclopedia. I can't remember now. But yeah, there's one journal that they just don't like the kind of stuff I do. So there's politics at play here. Yeah. Also, a lot of times, who is the editor for a journal? Because that changes over time, because people get, they get tired, they can't keep doing it. And sometimes you get a good editor who has a good vision, and other times you get an editor who has no vision, or an editor who's very closed-minded, or an editor who's too open-minded. And you're like, you published that piece of crap? Like, what is this? So just because it's peer-reviewed, it just means a few other people read it and said, yeah, you can publish that. That's fine. Yeah. Like, that's all peer review means, which is kind of shocking when you learn that.
I mean, in my experience, Ryan, there was a paper. I'll just say this. Because I've written a few papers now. One of the papers that I wrote, I've had the journal in their own way basically just say, this is too conservative Christian for us.
Yeah.
And the way of saying that was actually, well, we couldn't find any issues with what you said, but we're going to send this to other people as well to further review this. And then they did that like about 3 times and still found no issues. And basically they tried to jump through all the hoops they could to not publish it and find something wrong with it. And they couldn't find anything wrong with it. And so they just rejected it, saying it's not a good fit.
Yeah.
It's why did you just say that in the first place?
I don't know, but I've had a similar story where one paper went through 4 different reviewers, and then eventually the editor started complaining about my paper on the incarnation. And I was like, oh, so this paper that's not on the incarnation at all, you're mad because I argued against you in a different paper. But okay, that's what's going on. That's exactly what it came down to. Is he just didn't like me. And I'm like, cool.
You can't be part of my club. So
yeah.
Man, okay. Here's the last case I'm going to show for today. That's the case of Emma McKinley. There's more medical documentation here than I can show, especially for this one. There's 2 things that I can show though, and one I have access to show you, and the other is publicly accessible, but it's not medical documentation. It's actually, in my opinion, maybe even stronger because it's a legal document between her and a corporation, large corporation, and there's money involved and all this other stuff.
Oh,
so that means, yeah.
I'm intrigued now.
Yeah. So Emma McKinley was injured at work in 1993, and she was diagnosed with RSD, CRPS symptoms after the injury. She had to use crutches. RSD, by the way, is just a neurological pain disorder at the end of the day. She had to use crutches in January January 1995, and she was wheelchair bound by 1995. I should have included the pictures for this one. Her left hand was actually closed into like a claw shape like this, and she could not move it. Her left foot was turned inward, so it was pronated inward towards the inside of her hip, basically, and it was stuck like that. And her the leg was bent. She has legal medical records that later described her as wheelchair bound and needing personal care services all like the whole day. On December 24th, 2011, she reports that she actually had a dramatic remission of all of this after falling from a wheelchair and crying out to Jesus. A male physician, Dr. David Bell, was reportedly astonished to see her standing independently in January 2012. In 2016, the Minnesota Workers' Compensation Court of Appeals vacated prior awards for workman's comp because she had undergone an unanticipated substantial change in medical condition. So, she has a chronic pain condition. It's something that happens after an injury. The symptoms can include severe pain, swelling, temperature, color changes, skin changes, hypersensitivity, stiffness, and decreased function. The Mayo Clinic notes that I'll show you shows that there's improvement, and even remission, by the way, is possible here, especially with early treatment, but later stage changes can become difficult to reverse. But the evidential issue here is going to be not whether or not it's possible to have remission here or things to get better. It's going to be the pattern, right? How long did it happen? How severe was it? How do you explain the sudden transition and the religious timing, which we'll get into? So we kind of went over this a little bit. By the way, the corporation is Target. So she struck her head after falling off a ladder at work, and her left arm and foot were trapped. After she got taken care of, she developed the symptoms of RSD in the left lower extremities. She had skin reddening, sweat pattern changes, and a positive bone scan, and she was diagnosed with somatoform pain disorder superimposed on RSD. Fancy language just to say she was very sensitive, constant pain, and her nervous system was basically like, don't move or we'll die. We're going to feel all this pain. And she kept on like getting crunched into herself and all this other stuff. That picture you saw in the beginning was basically her state. She was in a wheelchair bound and she was like stuck like this. She, like I said, she developed all this pain, skin edema, claw shape for the hand. She was tilted left into her wheelchair. Her left ear was literally like almost touching her shoulder half the time. Foot stuck inward. We have the legal recognition of the severity in some legal documents here. And over 52% permanent partial disability, permanent total disability. The work injury substantially contributed to the disability. And she was confined to a wheelchair 24 hours per day. Left. You get the point there. Here's the timeline. So do you have any questions on any of that stuff before we get to?
I just want to make sure. So like, okay, so this injury takes place in 93 and then still recovering
2010 and 2011, Christmas Eve, by the way.
Christmas Eve. Okay.
She gets healed.
And then Dr. Bell is like, hey, this is pretty cool. And then 2016, the court says to Target, you don't have to keep paying all this.
Because she's healed.
So someone at Target is very, very happy to believe in miracles at this point, is what it looks like.
That was my first response when I saw when I was like actually going through the legal proceedings. I'm like, there's a bunch of legal talk for basically like, hey man, I don't really care what happened. Give me my money. Like, right.
I could easily, because I imagine like you're the lawyer in that case. You're just like, look, if it's an act of God, if it's Jesus' prerogative, I'm not going to complain. But she's healed, so we're not paying it. Like,
yeah, exactly. The rightmost image is a patient copy. I can't get a higher resolution photo, but this is from the Mayo Clinic, talking about all the symptoms, the diagnosis, all that stuff. The left is just a screen grab of publicly available records from the Minnesota Court of Workmen's Compensation Claims. So it's a long document. You can scroll through it if you want, read it all if you want. It's a riveting read. But I actually, in my opinion, I actually think the legal documentation might be stronger in some cases like this than the medical documentation, because this is just showing you like there's people under oath who there's money at stake, all this other stuff. The odds that she's making stuff up is really low, or that somebody else is making stuff up is really low here, because again, there's money involved. There's a corporation paying money, and corporations don't want to let go of their money. So what happened on Christmas Eve? She fell out of a wheelchair during the night on Christmas Eve, and she remained, I just had a little typo there, and she remained on the floor for a few hours, which is really sad to think about. Eventually, she cries out to Jesus, asking for him to help her. And she describes, she has a much more riveting description here, but I'm going to keep the emotions out of it.
Mm-hmm.
She basically says Jesus appeared to her as she's on the floor, comes up to her, and she says that she experienced him actually touching her, opening her hand, turning her foot, and then helping her get up and walk. So through physically maneuvering her, she experienced those things healing and getting fixed. And there's more stuff that's like testimony here, because there's no medical records here or anything like that up until this moment. But there's other testimony, for instance, of people showing up to Christmas Day for her. And then she opens the door and her family's like, what's going on? Why are you not in your wheelchair? Right. Like all this crazy stuff. And then she eventually has to get medical records done and all this other stuff for the legal proceedings. So on January 4th, 2012, Dr. David Bell, one of her Mayo Clinic treating physicians, saw her standing independently and was astonished. And he noted that she had been wheelchair bound since he met her in 2004. She could walk a few steps with standby assistance, but fatigued easily, and she still had significant pain. So this is most likely because of the muscle atrophy that came from the RSD. But now she can actually walk and actually build the musculature that she needs to keep living a normal life. So she went from profound disability and wheelchair dependence to standing, walking, and later caring for herself. So you have a woman who documented RSD, long-term wheelchair dependence, claw left hand, inward turn foot, severe leftward postural disposition, permanent total disability findings, personal care needs, years of Mayo Clinic treatment, who had a sudden remission event on Christmas Eve, explicitly interpreted by her as an encounter with Jesus who physically touched her, near immediate restoration of standing and walking ability, and then later ability to actually bathe herself as she regained her ability to move in these ways. So bathing herself, dress, get clean, use transportation, and live without personal care assistance. And a whole court process got reorganized with a substantial medical change, saying that she doesn't have to be paid out anymore. So what has to be explained here is the pain improvement, but also like it's sudden, it's durable, it's multiple, it's multi-domained. It's not just like, oh, she can like take care of herself, like physical locking of the hand, all this stuff, right, that procedures couldn't fix somehow got fixed overnight after years and years of this disability. Alternative explanations could be remission, but CRPS can't actually remit. It can remit, but the medical sources explicitly acknowledge that this improvement happens over time. Emma's case had lasted about 7 years, so it's even longer into it. So the longer you're into this, the harder it is to kind of get out. She had the severe contractures, all that stuff. And she was, at this point, had day-around personal care. And this transition was abrupt, right? It's not, oh, she started some physical therapy that actually started happening over time. This was an abrupt change. And then the slow, gradual changes that happened were actually her building the musculature afterwards. um, the functional somatoform mechanism. So basically, somebody might say something like, well, this can make a functional neurological explanation like more likely or something like that. But it doesn't actually dismiss the case, basically just because the record also documents RSD type physical findings. The disability was legally recognized for years. Her wheelchair dependence and personal care needs were treated as real. The post-event change was significant enough to alter the legal status of the prior awards. So I'm giving this one a 6 out of 7, mainly just because when she did get healed, she did not get restored to her original, like Jesus could have given her the musculature, maybe, right? And not have the need for physical therapy or anything like that. You could argue for this, but in the spirit of not overselling my case, I'm giving it a 6 out of 7, basically. So, what are your thoughts there, Ryan?
The legal stuff, I guess that's what really blows my mind on this one, because you've got, I mean, if you're going to try to get workman's comp, like this is a pretty big scam. Like you really got to commit to the bit to be hunched
Targets involved
like that. Yeah. and so for 17 years, Target's like forced to pay, and then all of a sudden they're like they can see she's better, and she's not trying to hide it either, it seems like. So they're just doing everything they can to like get this legally overturned.
Yeah.
That I don't know, this is remarkable to me, because yeah, you're right, because it's you've got clear interests at play for wanting this to, for like Target has like clearly would want to make sure like this is legit, like this woman's not injured anymore.
Maybe Target actually broke into her house. So a worker had a magical cure. He dressed up as Jesus, and just happened to come along in the religious context moment too. Like,
yeah,
that's the explanation.
Yeah, there we go. There's a purely naturalistic explanation.
So, yeah, I mean, okay. This is where I want to try to transition us now, because now here we have these philosophical questions, not just the question of like, how do you assess what's more likely or not?
Right.
But then the question of like, why did God interact in these cases and not some other cases? And how does this relate with like divine hiddenness and the problem of evil? So like as a philosopher now, if we assume that these cases are like more probable than not or something like that, like how does this affect natural theology? A lot of these discussions that end up happening.
So I'm granting that like these are all pretty legit. How would this affect?
Or yeah, we can start wherever you want. We can start on a bunch of different conditions, I guess. Like, how do you see this actually just kind of getting involved into the conversations that are being had? Because most of the time, like we said, like they get hand waved.
They do get hand waved. Yeah, So when I was writing my little book about a big God, I was trying to figure out some of these questions about hiddenness. And one of the issues for me is that God cannot make himself too obvious, because that would undermine this process by which we develop our own character. Because I think if we're going to become friends with God, I think that's one of God's goals, is that we become friends with God. God doesn't want us to be garbage people. He wants us to be like virtuous people. And if God makes his hand way too obvious all the time, then we're going to pretend to be good for the wrong reasons. We're not going to be good people for the right reasons.
Yeah.
But that doesn't really, in my mind, rule out the idea of miracles here or there, because I do think that it is possible for God to intervene here and there. I just don't know how wide scale that could be, because I think if it's too much, if it's too often, the hand of God would be so obvious that no one would really freely enter into a relationship with God. They would feel coerced. But we've got these cases. Each case that you laid out here, there's no coercion then, as far as I could tell. It's some situation in life really sucks, and some people cry out to God, and then God steps in. So there's no, in terms of like my account of, you know, hiddenness and divine friendship, there's no coercion going on at play. So it wouldn't affect my theology in a negative way, as far as I can tell. You could still always ask, like, well, why didn't he heal like this person? I'm like, I don't know. I have no idea. I mean, like, I don't know how to come up with a story for why God selects this person and not that person.
Yeah, I actually find the question of different possibilities to kind of just be like interesting, but not a question that actually like hurts the overall probability of Christianity,
Mhm.
because it somebody still got healed at the end of the day, right? Like, let's put it
Yeah.
this way. Like, it's like, do you think that, how do I word this? It's almost like, why did God choose, for instance, for us to see the color red as we see it, instead of like seeing it as a different way? And it's like, some of these, you can ask all these questions that you
Mhm.
want, but at the end of the day, it's like, hey, if you have like a dartboard, right? I'm trying. Let's do it this way. If there's like a type token distinction, and you're gonna
Mhm.
have the type God intervenes in a miraculous way, it seems like the probability that God is going to do those types is going to be way higher, than if atheism is true, that those types are going to come about, basically, right?
Oh, sure.
Um,
Okay, so you're up
that
to.
that's let me rephrase this. So if you have the type alleged miraculous event, these types are more expected on theism than atheism, right? And then by my lights, what ends up happening is you have the particular token instantiations of those types. And it's like, yeah, the particular tokens are not that probable on theism, but that's just because like you're throwing a dart on a near infinite dartboard, and you're going to ask what's the probability that the dart's going to land on this one spot on the infinite dartboard. It's like, we know it's going to hit the dartboard,
Mhm.
right? And so it's like, on the atheist account, the token is still going to be way less. Like, the relative proportion of the probability is going to be similar at the token level as the type level. Is that what I'm trying to say? Does that make sense?
Mhm. Yeah, because it's similar to like the setup for like the fine tuning argument about what you'd expect given the
Yeah.
phenomena we see. Yeah, that seems right to me. If you build in more than just like a generic theism, because if we've just got like the generic theism, this is something I've come really felt forced to admit more recently. If you just say like there's God
Hmm.
and generic theism, I don't know what you should expect from God.
Yeah.
Well, let me give you an example of this. So, like Plotinus. Plotinus has got like this account of the one, and
Hmm.
the one like is the source of all of reality. Everything emanates from the one, and but the one is completely unknowable, indescribable. Yeah, except when Plotinus is like, let me describe a bunch of these things that this indescribable being has, and
Yeah.
here are properties, even though the one doesn't have any property, and you're just like, okay, thanks, man. But this is but like this kind of account of God is one you see prominent in the Western tradition, and if that's like the kind of God in view here, then I'm like, I don't know what I expect from a being that I can't really know anything about. So I think
Hmm.
it can't just be generic theism. I think it's going to have to build a little bit more content into the hypothesis, which is fine if you're a Christian because you're like, well, I've got a whole like bigger story to tell
Yeah.
where miracles do happen sometimes. And this is, I guess, one of the takeaways for me though. When I'm looking at the Bible, vast portions of the Bible, there's no miracle stories at all happening. Like the ones we
Hmm.
remember are the miracle stories. But when you're just going through like, the book of Kings, it's like, oh yeah, this king, he had a bunch of concubines, he had he had some cattle and then he died. And then it just goes on like that for quite a while. It's pretty boring, but you're just like, right, huge portions of biblical history, nothing miraculous is happening. And so the expectation that there's going to be miracles everywhere, I don't think should be a Christian expectation.
Yeah.
The expectation that we're going to get some miracles here or there, that seems fine to me. That seems right to me on a biblical
Hmm.
account. But if like popping up like constantly, like some atheists want, I'm like, that's just not a biblical expectation.
Yeah. What's really interesting too with the biblical narrative, one of the things that stands out to me is the incredible shows of power that God does have in the Bible. People don't actually respond to those in faith.
Yeah,
Like, God is
right.
like God has to consistently remind people of the things he's done for them. And I would argue that there's like a profoundly, deeply psychological truth, like anthropological truth, that's actually in the biblical narrative, which is a lot of the times when it comes to miracles and even divine hiddenness, what people are seeking is not congruent with God's goals. And so God wanting a deep, profound relationship with you,
Hmm.
that means you have to actually know God, not and experience the agent, the actual person, right? Rather than the things that he's capable of. So the thing that made me the thing that actually made this really stand out to me was I was talking with a friend and I was telling him how because of my this isn't like a humble brag either, and I'm sure you've experienced this in a way. It's really hard to actually feel connected to a church community and to other Christians a lot of times once they figure out who you are and what you do for work,
Mm-hmm.
because there's like this social hierarchy that you automatically get placed in.
Yes.
And all of a sudden people mask, they change how they behave around you. And then there's also expectations placed on you, and you have to, right? God's not going to feel like he has to change who he is or anything like that. But like, for instance, I do. Like, I'm a goober, dude. I like I like anime. I like lifting. I swear. And so like when I'm around other people that don't know me, right? People are really just coming to me for like the things that I can give, but they don't know Than. So then all of a sudden I'm in this place where it's like I feel lonely because I have a bunch of people that know me, right? But don't know me.
Right.
And with God, you have these instances of power where people are seeking these things, but then they don't actually get to know God, because the only way you get to know people is through experiencing the person or through narrative, I would argue.
Yes.
And so these like this is a big yap session that I'm getting onto at this point, sorry. But to tie it all together, it's like when I look at the biblical narrative, these shows of power aren't actually the things that inspire allegiance and trust and love, right?
Mhm.
More often than not, it's the show of power plus actually getting to know God through experience that actually shifts those things. And people actually desiring the truth and the good and all that stuff. Like, it's also very plausible that maybe you experience God, know him, and then still choose to not be with him because you don't like what you see.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So
I mean, the story of Jonah is a great case of this, where Jonah is just doing everything he can to get away from God and not like spread this, this message to these people because he wants the Ninevites he wants them destroyed, and he's angry at God when God doesn't destroy them. And then at some point, Jonah has to sit down with God, and God's like, "What do you expect? Like, do you think I'm not gonna give forgiveness when forgiveness is out there?" And he's like, "Well, yeah, no, I know you're a God who forgives people. That's why I don't want to preach to these Ninevites." Like, and I think there's something so incredibly human about that moment in the story of Jonah, where I'm like, yeah, if I like really hated a group of people for like the things they did to my community, I wouldn't want God to forgive them either. So I feel like I understand exactly what Jonah's going through. So you see all the miracles you want, and you're just like, no, I know exactly what I want out of the situation. I want those people destroyed.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is one of the reasons why I actually think that divine hiddenness, it can actually be undercut just from the outset without talking about miracles. But then I think about miracle claims, and I think about miracles that you might think are actually going to be evidentially relevant, right? Maybe they're not proven. Maybe you don't think they actually happened, but let's just say they're evidentially relevant.
Mhm.
You at least have to take seriously the idea that there are things that are happening that people are reporting where they say God showed up.
Yes.
And then the sociological ramifications of all that stuff. So the way I think that, at least by my lights, it affects divine hiddenness, I actually see it in the Goldilocks zone, because, like you said, God is apparent, but not so apparent that things aren't working out according to his goals. And again, just back to the analogy of social hierarchies and stuff like that, like with me in the church, like, people don't get to be themselves with me because they change the way they behave
Mhm.
to appease what they think I am and what they've projected onto me. And I also have to do the same thing with them, right? Now, imagine you have a God with near infinite power, and all of a sudden, how is that going to affect the way people are actually coming to him? Which is, I think, a reason why God actually chooses to become incarnate and become human, because he becomes known in the most gentle, non-coercive way that you can possibly can.
Yes. No, that seems
So,
right to me. Yeah. No, yeah, I like that.
Same thing with the problem of evil, at least for me, because I think about the defeat condition and stuff, which I think Do you hold to that the way that I kind of hold to, or
I don't remember how you understand the defeat condition.
I basically have a modified defeat condition, so I just say like that there's a set of boundary conditions
Mhm.
as to what types of suffering can and cannot be permitted,
Okay.
given theism. And basically, it's more of a possibility premise, and I say it's the types of suffering that would make it impossible for an agent to, on the whole, look at their life and endorse as worthwhile.
Okay.
So I'm not saying that the suffering has to be defeated, because there's an aspect to the defeat of the suffering that is actually the responsibility of the agent themselves,
Mhm.
if that makes sense.
It is. Because I really like this premise, this principle, because like Marilyn Adams has this, like that you need to be able to say, on the whole, my life is one that's worth living.
Mhm.
And that sounds right to me, but I'm not as confident about universal salvation as Marilyn was.
Yeah, I'm not a universalist.
And after living in Philadelphia for a few years, like I like any sort of sense of universalism that I used to really cling to, I'm like, that's gone, because I can easily imagine a lot of these people just saying screw you to God forever. Like, oh gosh. And Philly's like, Philly sucks, but like there's a lot of places much worse. And so I'm like, right, significantly worse. So my confidence in universalism is really, really taken a big dip. So I don't know what to do with this principle anymore, of that God has to give everyone a life on the whole that's worth living. Because if you consistently, even post mortem, say screw you to God,
Yeah.
that's not a life worth living. Is it? So
Well,
maybe the principle needs to be something like God gives everyone the sufficient opportunity to have a life on the whole that's worth living.
yeah. So this is something that I've been thinking about. Because one, I agree with you, and that's why I formulated the principle the way I do.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there is a type of um, endorsement that happens with a lot of people. So here's an analogy. I write this in the book, my theodicy book that I'm writing. Suppose you have like two twin brothers, and they both get diagnosed with the same cancer, and they both have the same doctor, and they both have beautiful hair, and part of their identity is actually like rooted in having really beautiful hair, kind of
Mhm.
like is almost as gorgeous as yours.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah.
um, say now that the doctor says, okay, we're gonna have to give you chemo, both of you, and the thing that's gonna suck is like your beautiful locks are gonna go away. Brother one takes the the chemo, gets healed, lives. Brother two says, screw that. I would rather die in defiance to the cancer
Mhm.
than um lose my identity. And then he still is in this place of saying, yeah, my life was worth it. And this final act is like a testimony to that, because I get to do the thing and live as authentically, as truly as I am. And so
Mhm.
I can actually see a place where somebody would say something like, this sounds dark, but it's like humans are like this. I feel like
Yeah.
people don't want to admit this, but like people are like this. I can see somebody giving God the middle finger and being like, "Hey, all of this crap that I went through, it was worth it, so I could just do this to you
Yeah.
and still reject you." I think that is like a conceivable enactment of actually saying you're worth it. It was worth it.
Well, it's not just conceive. I've met these people. I mean, that's the thing. Is like,
Yeah,
like
exactly.
I feel like every time I walk out on the street, I'm like, yeah, that person over there would definitely do this. Like, uh, so yeah, I feel like I met those people today. So yeah, it's not just conceivable. This is actual.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I think that's a really good story, because like there's something that really does capture a particular feeling that we have as humans sometimes, of going, no, this is really what I want, and I will take this to the bitter
Mhm.
end.
Right. And so that would be, in my estimation, an actual enactment of the defeat condition, because the
Mm.
person has now at this point deemed their life worthwhile.
Mhm.
It's just not in a way that we would deem it worthwhile, but that person has intersubjectively experienced their
Mhm.
life as worthwhile because of the defiant act that just reinforces the whole narrative that they've made for themselves.
That's an interesting plot twist on this, because I don't think Marilyn, when she was or Swinburne, like when he was writing this kind of this sort of condition of like, you know, it has to be a life that's on the whole worth living. I don't think they were really thinking of fully through the kind of inner narrative that someone could tell, where someone might go, yeah, giving God the middle finger, that is really a life worth living. But that's like
because you don't think like that.
Right, exactly. But like, did you see Cabin in the Woods? Like this horror movie that Joss Whedon did? Like this is ages ago. Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's basically what the characters in the end do is they just like, it's a big defiance against the gods and against the corporation that's trying to appease all the gods. And that's kind of Joss Whedon's philosophy of life as well, is just, even if there are gods, screw them.
Yeah.
And so that would be, in their minds, a life that's worth living.
Right, exactly. And there's also another thing that I think philosophers haven't taken into account though with this, which is there seems to be this logic. Okay, so one, I think they don't really appreciate this difference between Franciscan and Dominican knowledge, right? Knowing, which there's the knowing propositions about something versus knowing the thing, right? So knowing that fire burns and knowing what it feels like to get burned by fire, right? I would say, Ryan, you and I know each other more so as friends too. And so like, I know certain things about you. I've experienced who Ryan is beyond just the philosophical capabilities. That's why I send you Instagram reels of birds and people making metal breakdowns to their tweet.
Yeah, exactly.
And so I think when you really think about this as well, this is something I've been toying around with, which is, I'm gonna ask you the question rather than saying this. Do you think that it's possible for God to give you that experiential knowledge in any other way other than you choosing to experience God and know Him?
My intuition is to say no. Like, you really have to, like, God can't just dump this experiential knowledge in your head. Like, I don't know what that would mean, and I don't know how humans, given our current nature, I don't know how you could process it. So this is something I was thinking about a lot about in response to like Schellenberg's hiddenness arguments. Is it looks like Schellenberg's really demanding that God just give us like all knowledge, both propositional, experiential, just kind of just like dumping the stuff at our head from the start. And I just think that goes against human nature. It goes against any sort of things we know about human psychology, human biology, everything. And also, I just don't have this expectation. My expectation is to really develop your moral character, your intellectual character. It takes time. It takes a lot of iterations of experiences before it really sinks in. I think that's just how humans are. So if you want humans to come to know God, there's certain conditions, there's certain ways that you can go about achieving that. And snapping your fingers and just dumping a bunch of experience or a bunch of propositions in their head, that's not it. That's not one of the options.
Right. Okay. I'm really glad you shared that intuition then, because I have the same intuition. I actually think that God cannot just download that experience of Him into our head. So basically, then with that kind of set in stone, and you and I kind of agree that God wants that deep relationship. And this also answers a anticipated objection, which is like somebody might say, well, I can't have that relationship with God without knowing He exists. And I'm going to get into that. And I think that's actually false. But basically it's like this. So one of the assumptions that I think I see is like this jump from propositional knowledge all the way to relational allegiance.
Oh, right.
So here's a thought experiment. I know you're married, so just imagine you're single and somebody comes up to you. I come up to you and I am like, hey, Ryan, I'm not going to dox your wife. So I'm just going to say, here is wife. That's her name. Right.
Yeah.
And I go, Ryan, I know you don't know this girl, but 5 years from now, if you choose to actually get in a relationship with her, you're going to marry her. And I can guarantee you that with 100% certainty. Does that propositional knowledge, and I'll also give you other propositional knowledge that she exists, like you see her, you see what she looks like, you have all these propositions about her, but you've not spoken to her, you've not experienced like suffering with her, you've not gone through anything with her, right? All that's ever happened is you just see her. Does that give you an experience of her such that you know her and choose her?
Oh gosh, no, not even close. Because
Does you knowing the future somehow generate an allegiance to you for her?
no, no, not at all. Because especially given my my dating background, like, oh gosh, I had some horrible exes, and
Oh man, we could stay here for hours.
right, but like, I'll just say that like, just seeing like a girl that she's hot, she ticks a lot of my boxes. She's like brilliant intellectually. She's funny. That she's this or that. I'd still just be like, yeah, well, I've dated a lot of really hot, smart chicks. Like that doesn't mean anything to me.
Mhm.
I need to know more,
Yeah,
and which is exactly what you're getting after, which is like that. I would exactly would go. No, I need to know more.
exactly.
I need to experience this for myself to really see if how this actually what this really
Right.
looks like. Yeah.
And so basically, I'm using that analogy to kind of interrupt this jump that happens
Hmm.
because people think, oh, I know God exists, then I would naturally follow him. But it's like, no, that's not true.
No,
Right.
not at all.
Like, imagine now for some reason that in this thought experiment with your wife, what you find is that you don't like who she is.
Hmm.
Right. In this alternative world, we introduce you to wife. And yeah, you guys get married, but you don't like her
Hmm.
and you live a marriage with her that you just don't like her and you choose to be far away from her and like isolate yourself from her in this relationship. It's a bad relationship because you see her and you know her and you don't like her.
Yeah, that would be miserable.
So yeah, exactly. And so the basic idea here is like I'm through a narrative and analogy, I'm breaking apart the idea that like just knowing that God exists doesn't entail that you're going to actually choose your allegiance for him.
No, not remotely. Because like I mean, at my time as a minister, and then even in my like looking at my own life too. There's dark nights of the soul where you
Mhm.
don't doubt that God exists, but you hate God. You're angry at God. I've had to counsel people in that situation. I've been in that situation myself. So yeah, just knowing that God exists that doesn't mean anything. Like we're nothing. Not a lot really follows from that. Having a personal relationship with God that's actually trusting that
Yeah.
you can't that takes time. You can't just dump propositions and just dump experiences on
Right.
somebody. You got to really have those experiences a bunch of times, have time to process them, time to really reflect on them, time to really understand what trust in God looks like. This is not an instantaneous thing. And it doesn't, none of
Right.
that follows from, oh, God exists. Okay. That
Yeah.
Kalam cosmological argument, man, okay, God exists. Therefore, no, that's not how this
But
works.
now I'm gonna give my whole life. And then so this leads into the preemptive objection, right? Which is like, okay, well, I have to know somebody exists in order to actually like experience them and know them. And I would argue that's not true.
Mhm.
So I'm sure you've seen this in the philosophical literature about what do they call it? Fictionalists, religion,
Oh, mhm.
stuff like that. But
Yes.
also just like in psychology, for instance, I grew up watching Dragon Ball Z. I know Goku doesn't exist. I don't
Mhm.
think he exists, but I know Goku. Meaning like if you were to come up with like um a headcanon or fan narrative of the Dragon Ball Z universe and tell me what the narrative structure is and what Goku will face, I can tell you like, yeah, this is probably what he would do. Right. So like the basic idea is like you can actually know people through narrative, even if they're not real. And so for people that are saying, I need to know God exists, right? Well, I'm going to argue you don't. You can actually look at the biblical narrative and then see how he works with people. And I would say, look at the work of Jesus, and then you can actually get to know who God truly is through the narrative.
Mhm.
Um, so this backs off a little bit from miracles, but then so let's bring miracles into this again. And I would argue that God's miracles in humanity actually give us another portrait of who he is, right? You have um, people like Emma McKinley, who, despite the fact that her suffering would have been defeasible without the miracle,
Mhm.
right? Still chose to meet her. And if you listen to her testimony, like she's talking about how it's like the most tender, loving, like all of the expectations of the world and how she's supposed to be are gone, and she just feels like totally accepted and taken care of and chosen in that moment. That is like there's also these other narratives that you can actually get to know God through,
Mhm.
kind of a thing. So
This seems right to me. I won't name these people, but like I know several people who worked really really hard on religious fictionalism. And at first, when they were starting these projects, I was just like, "Why do you care? Like you're an atheist or whatever." And getting to know them personally and getting to see the way they developed the religious fictionalist accounts, I could see this was really deeply personal for them because
Mhm.
because it was sort of like, I want this to be true. I want to participate in this community. I want all of this to participate in this world. I just don't believe that it's true. And this was the best they could do to really like fall into all of that. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I feel like you're experiencing something of God that a lot of people would be envious of. But yeah, that's all I'll say on that because those are
Yeah,
not
I
my
know
stories to
I
tell
know a few
publicly.
people. There's actually 2 atheists that I know right now that are doing something like this. Um, and then the most not astonishing, and I'm actually kind of expected this, but basically they were just like, "You know what, man? I'm gonna act like Christianity is true," is what they said.
Hmm.
And before they started this experiment, I was like, "Look, if you're gonna do this, your inward posture has to be in the right place. It can't be a thing where it's like, I'm going to do this as an experiment to grasp towards a conclusion. Like, this is one of those things where you're going to have to pray and you're actually going to have to be present in the prayer rather than like praying and then like having one eye open and like looking like, is there anything happening? Like, be
Right.
present in the prayer and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And it took them a few days to get like used to that and like realize these more um, subconscious things that they were doing as they were
Hmm.
getting into it. But after about 2 weeks, both of them are like, "I think I'm actually starting to believe,"
Hmm.
because they're actually getting these experiences now. So it's really interesting. Yeah.
Hmm.
A lot to think about now.
It is.
So
Yeah.
we're almost at the 2-hour mark. What are your thoughts then? Like, if you were to, like, recollect a bunch of your thoughts here, we went over a few cases.
Hmm.
Um, how does this relate to special divine action, divine hiddenness, problem of evil? Like, where did this change anything? Give you anything new to think about?
It didn't really give me anything new to think about. It just kind of confirms different conversations I'm having with different people, different scientists. Um, it's hard to find a scientist who has a somewhat of a philosophical brain
Mhm.
because a lot of scientists are just like, I do this experiment, I get this output, that's all that matters. And I'm like, well, but what does it tell us about the world? I'm like, I'm not interested in talking about the world. I'm like, okay, fine. All right. So so scientists who actually have like interest in the bigger picture of the world. The kind of conversations I'm having with them is a growing frustration with naturalism and just going, there's certain things I know to be true. I know that I am a mind. I know that I have free will. I know morality exists. Like, stop it. And if your naturalism tells you you can't have it, well, so much the worse for naturalism.
Mhm.
And just this kind of open mindedness to a lot of different things that even views myself that I'm not wanting to be open minded about. And yes, Constantine, yes, that's my cat is just like,
Man, I love that cat. I haven't seen
yeah,
that cat in a while.
come here, come here, come on, show everybody, come on, there we go, there we go. Just look at the camera for a second, you know.
Oh, man.
He wants to just do his own thing. I lost my train of thought. My train of thought was a lot of these miracle cases in the past have been very skeptical towards, but some of my skepticism was founded. Some of it was just there's no reason to be skeptical of. So
Mhm.
I like the kind of criteria you're coming up with to go. Let's really dig deep into these and see if it ticks a bunch of boxes. Are there like nefarious things going on in different sort of reported miracle claims? Obviously, and you should look those out because you really
Yeah.
should. Because there's a lot of charlatans out there. I mean, the prosperity gospel has loads of
Oh,
them.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I like the kind of criteria you're coming up with. Going, oh, no, we need to
I
look into these.
I'm glad you brought that up because I think you can actually put a spin on that even too,
Hmm.
by the way, because a lot of people will go, "Well, look at all these miracle claims that are out there," but they're like people making stuff up just because they wanna whatever, right?
Hmm.
Insert motivation here. And the thing is, prima facie, it might seem like, okay, well, that's a good reason to doubt any other miracle claims. But I would actually argue, like, no, if you take a second to slow down, it might actually help authenticate some other miracles more because we have really, really good controls now for what it looks like when you have fabricated miracle claims,
Hmm.
right? And we can look for those signs in these other accounts, and if that makes sense,
Hmm.
almost like when it comes to like manuscripts. for the New Testament, right? People oftentimes be like, well, look, you have in the manuscript traditions, you have people inserting things here. We know they inserted him here and a change here, blah, blah, blah. And the thing is, like, well, if you go beyond that objection, what you'll find is that the scholars are going like, no, that's actually like a really helpful thing, because now we can know with more confidence what the original
Right.
said, because we know what the fakes look like.
Yes.
Right. And I would actually argue like false miracle claims that we see so prevalently, right? They might give you a statistical reason for thinking other miracle claims might be false, but probabilities aren't just statistics at the end of the day, and they can actually,
Right.
you get the point.
Yeah, no, you're right. Like looking at all the false cases, it gives you like, oh, well, this is what I need to look for to see if this is like BS. And so you can start stacking up a whole bunch of criteria that way. So no, yeah, I think that sounds good to me.
Cool. All right, let's finish up some super chats here and then we can call it a day. Where was I? Than, do you also reject simplicity and timelessness? Ryan knows my position. But right now we're in a place in the apologetics culture where I'd rather just think conditionally and have tons of models of God that I defend. If that makes sense. Does that make sense to you, Ryan?
It does. I think in terms of like the ministry, like that's right to be like, this is the main focus. Yeah.
Strange, so many miracles feel like electricity. Yeah, actually. I want to think on that. It's something, it's one of those things that I've actually taken for granted. A lot of people say this, but now it's like,
because I just finished supervising a master's thesis on psychedelics and religious experience, and it was like deeply inspired by like William James, and I happened to be reading it just outside of the place where William James gave his Gifford lectures that became his book on the varieties of religious experience, and that's something described in there a lot too. Is I felt like waves of electricity, like that was like a common theme, and so I'm like, that's weird.
Yeah, I
don't know what to do with that though.
10 joules, happy poop.
Yeah, I mean,
okay, man. I thank you. I don't know what I'm looking at.
Well, I mean, I wish all of you a happy poop. You know, it's awful when you have a bad one.
That's true.
That's
true. Maybe theism just predicts deities will come up from natural philosophy that looks like him as a way to potentially save those outside his more active work.
Oh, so like, I've been curious about this too, because you see these religions just pop up all over the place. Like it's just natural for humans to develop religious beliefs. John Calvin says it's because you got the religious, like the sense of the divine is like an innate faculty. But the reason there's all these false religions is because of like just how horrible and awful and sinful we are as humans. Whereas this would be like the flip side of that, going like, well, God's given you like, there's a lot of false religions, sure, but it's because like God's trying to give you enough to work on, to build you for another encounter with God.
Have you looked into any cognitive science of religion stuff?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So
I published a paper with a cognitive scientist of religion.
Which one?
It's this one. Larry Launinen from Helsinki. It was called something like why classical theism is not natural, why open theism is natural, but classical theism is not. And that I'm pretty sure that's open access.
Larry Launinen.
Yeah.
Okay. I haven't read that paper before. So
it's a fun one. And Larry, I mean, because his PhD was on cognitive science of religion, and he's Finnish Pentecostal, and Pentecostal in Finland is like the most like kind of boring milquetoast evangelical church experience, like American experience. Like it's like if they raise their hand during the service, it won't go past their shoulder because that's showing off. So, and I was like, this feels like home to me. So it was funny to see. But yeah, Larry's really bright. He knows the cognitive science literature inside and out.
I'll check out the paper.
Mm-hmm.
Reading through Mullins' Eternal and Love, it's so good. Any potential for an audiobook in the future so I can share and recommend to others?
I recorded the audio. I've just been so overwhelmed with everything that I've not sat down to edit all of it, but I have actually recorded the whole book. I just have to edit out all the mistakes I've made while I was trying to read, or the swearing where I was like, why did I structure the sentence this way? What was I thinking? I have to edit all that out, and then the audiobook will be done.
I know that feeling.
Yeah.
I know that feeling. If they stubbornly appeal to natural explanations, just force them to explain the exact amount of suffering we see on atheism better than with God.
Mm-hmm. These are certain challenges that I think, naturalism needs to deal with. Yeah.
A positive redemptive butterfly effect appears present in all events of evil and suffering. Case in point, Joseph in Genesis. Yeah. I would argue the redemptive effects of any of these events are going to be things that even like we intersubjectively bring about within ourselves too. This is a fun thing. I think I talked to you about this at a conference one time, Ryan, where it's like,
oh yeah,
there's objective meaning, but then there's this intersubjective psychological meaning, and it's like typically there's this dichotomy. It's like if God exists, then we have objective meaning, and an atheist turns around and goes, "Well, guess what? If God doesn't exist, we get to make our own meaning." And I'm like, "Well, you're both wrong. What if it's both? What if Christianity is true and it's both?" Right? Like,
yeah. This is a pluralistic account of meaning, is what it's called. Yeah.
I have metaphysical arguments for bare theism. Highly predicts Than's narrative axiology without outside assumptions. So I think we can just use bare T.
Oh, right. Because I've said I've recently come to doubt this idea of bare theism. So yeah, I'd be curious to see some of these things, because I'm supposed to do a dialogue on the significance of natural theology later this year, and I need to start rethinking what exactly is my position now, because I don't know.
Oh, we can talk privately on that. I can kind of walk you through some stuff that I at least have been toying around with. 1,000 jewels goat trophy. I wish I could see the trophy when maybe it shows up on the actual stream itself rather than StreamYard. There's more divine sociological ethical implications of hiddenness. If we expect certain things from God, his obligations change within reason. Yeah. One fun example that I gave to a person I was mentoring, Ryan, just a few weeks ago. He was dealing with scrupulosity and like religious anxiety. And so basically like he fell into the cycle of like finding an objection online or coming across like an atheist creator's video, right? And then he would feel this anxiety, which would then feed this sense of urgency and impulse to find an answer. But like he's operating from a place of get rid of this feeling rather than search for truth. And every single time he's trying to find an answer to the objection, it just reinforces this cycle of anxiety rather than like healing and like thinking healthy, if that makes sense.
It does. Yeah.
And so and I remember like the aha moment when I actually helped him unpack that he's like operating from anxiety rather than like just truth seeking. And he's like, well, why wouldn't God just give me the answer so that way, like, I can feel better? And I'm like, because it'd be like giving a person that's addicted to drugs more drugs.
Yeah.
Right. Like, so it's like, God, that would actually be the worst thing for God to do right now, because it's not going to fix your anxiety. You're just going to feel worse again at some point. And so, yes, this just speaks to the super chat point.
Yeah.
God showed up in person for Abraham. But would people today go through with the binding of Isaac, even with 100% proof of God? I'd argue no for many. Shoot, man. God could show up in front of me, and I'd probably still be a coward if he asked me to do some things.
Because when I look at like the Abraham case, and I look at the case of like Isaiah or Jeremiah, I'm often like, I don't know if I want a religious experience. I don't like that. Sounds terrifying. It sounds awful. I'm like, I don't know if I want this.
I miss Tim. Don't forget to start on IPA school. Tim is just working right now. Tim will be going full time with us in the next few weeks, I think.
Nice.
So I'm super excited for that. Constantine's just showing off that physique right now.
Yeah, he's like, look, well, actually, he's been lazy lately. He's not been getting on his exercise wheel as much. So.
But yeah, real quickly, since you did bring up the this school thing, for anybody that doesn't know or anybody that hasn't checked it out yet, we do have like one of the reasons why we started Inspiring Philosophy Academy is because we actually have a school community, SKOLL. So if you go to our main website, inspiringphilosophy.com, scroll down, we have an academy page, and Ryan's helping out with this. We have a bunch of different scholars helping out with this. And the end result here is not just to give you a bunch of knowledge, right? It's actually for you to like experience a transformation and be the kind of Christian that people come to when they need help. This is like an actual identity shift that we're hoping you go through as you go through these courses and work with us. Ryan, do you have anything you want to say on this? Or
I mean, other than I'm just really excited for all of this to start coming together, because the vision you guys have is something I really appreciate. It's not a vision I come across often. And so the focus on, we're going to shape your mind, but we're going to shape your heart and your identity. That I'm just like, finally, it's about time.
Heck yeah.
Some people were doing this. So I'm excited.
I am very excited about it. It's going to take a lot of building. And when you guys come in and you start doing the courses and stuff like that, like we're still in the beginning phases. So give us your feedback too, because we want to keep actually helping you. So like weird questions, but like seriously, when you take the courses and you get in the community, like ask yourself questions like, how did that thing make me feel? Or when are the moments that you actually feel like you've earned competence or confidence in some of these topics? Those are going to be really important pieces of information for us as we keep building these things. I think universalism is mostly about how you view the nature of man than the nature of God. I think many will just hate God more and more in hell. I think I agree with that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the thing I don't want to admit, but yeah.
Yeah. I'm happy admitting it. What I don't want to deal with is people being like, how could you say that? And it's like, well, people suck, man.
Yeah, I know. I especially because like a lot of the people who like be like, how can you say this? They're also the same people who are like, oh, I think humanity sucks. And you're like, right. Yeah, you do think this. So stop it.
Yeah. Why not clone our minds to immortal euphoria generating machines if the good life is just maximizing pleasure? Because hey, whenever it comes to this kind of stuff, man, I always just go back to the Barbie movie when Barbie is given a choice between going back to her Barbie world, which is perfect, or being a human when she knows it's going to have suffering and she's going to die eventually. And what does she say? I want to make meaning.
Yeah.
Dude, when that moment happened, I looked at my wife because I was like, oh my, I didn't want to watch the Barbie.
It surprised me. It was better than I expected, you know?
Yeah. It was worth it. It was defeasible. A rare few fall in love with fictional characters. It's true. You see it with AI right now, I feel like. Just wanted to thank you both for all you do. I hope your student loan provider greatly. I love you, Ryan. I think the meta-ethical domain entails metaphysical domain pipeline is way too overlooked when accounting for epistemic axiological interdependence.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that when you're trying to develop your metaethics, like your overall metaphysical picture of the world has to come into play. Yeah, so what I like seeing is some people understanding that, like Wielenberg or David Enoch going, yeah, here we go. Get rid of naturalism. They have, or maybe keep something like natural, but get a Platonism as well, and try to develop your metaethics and whatnot. I think it's more honest. It's more interesting.
Yeah. Last one. Than's Catholic. These are Catholic standards. Yes. The Lambertini criteria is Catholic criteria. I'm just using them as a placeholder as I figure out how to put the stuff in my head out. Again, you understand what I mean by that. Like, there's just so many unspoken and unarticulated things you have in your head.
Yeah.
And you're like, how do I bring that out and systematize that? It's crazy.
It is difficult.
All right. Somebody else sent one, and right after I said that's the last one. There's some academic papers I'd be interested in writing, but I have no experience doing it. Not sure if school would be a good place for help. That is a really good idea. Like a course on just how do you write an academic paper and publish it.
Yeah, I do a seminar for my students at Lucerne the beginning of every academic year, just on how to write a master's thesis. But originally, that presentation was was based on a YouTube video that I did like ages ago, where someone was like, "How do you write an academic paper?" And I'm like, "Well, here's how you do it the Ryan Mullins way." So yeah, I've got a presentation ready to go on that if people at the school are interested.
Yeah, I'm just writing it down so I don't forget.
Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah, because I would also want to put a spin on it too. It's like overcoming the objections people tell themselves about these things too. It's like for
Yeah.
me, it's like I had like Perry Hendricks.
Mhm.
I had Perry basically use very offensive language that I'm not going to say on YouTube. To me, basically just been like, stop being and
Yeah.
just publish the paper. You have so many good ideas. Just like put your work out there. And then, because in my head, I was always just like, I don't know, I'm a college dropout. No one's going to publish me, blah, 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 blah. So I think talking about that kind of stuff too would be good for the course. So I just wrote that down.
Yeah.
All right. That is it. So Ryan, thanks for your time, man. This was fun. I also really liked, and I want to do more streams like this too, where there's stuff that me and you and like other philosophers, where we just kind of explore stuff and talk about things. Because I think that's gonna be really helpful for people too. We're just kind of like watching people think in real time and just kind of be like toy with ideas here and there. I think that'll be really helpful. But thank you everybody for watching us and listening. Thank you, Ryan, for your time. Remind everybody too, we have the Inspiring Philosophy Academy school community. The link is in the description below. Until next time, everybody, God bless.
You made it to the end of this video, which means this message matters to you. If you want to see more content like this reaching people for Christ, you can help make it happen. Your support makes these videos possible. Click the link below and donate today. And if you want to go even deeper, consider joining our Patreon community. You'll get early access to videos, behind the scenes content, and a place to connect with others passionate about this mission.